What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Unopinionated Sports. We're back for just a mini episode today because Sam and I had some conflicting travel plans, so we're just going to dive right into the head coaching vacancies, and there's been some recent hires, and just also some short snippets on some offensive coordinators and stuff like that. So,
Yes, good
first,
good evening, everyone. Hi.
yes, first, let's talk about the hirings. Um, The big one, obviously, just today, the Chargers hired Jim Harbaugh. Sam, what are your thoughts on that?
I know I like the move. It was been rumored for almost a couple months, ever since they got rid of Staley. I think it's a good fit. They're the team in the most win now ready mode. I think you got
Yep.
Herbert. You have some pieces. Yeah, they need to make some moves, but you have Herbert. That's the number one thing. You can work with that. It's kind of cool that interesting they chose a West Coast team again after being in with San Fran. And I can't believe it's been over a decade. Can you believe he's been at Michigan a decade? It
That is
kind of flew
insane
by.
to think about.
Kind of crazy, but he was really successful. And now that he's back in the league, he has, I think, one of the highest winning, if not the highest winning percentage right now among active coaches. So
Right.
pretty incredible. They got the guy they wanted. He interviewed also with Atlanta twice, so it made you
Yep.
think that Atlanta was really close. I don't know that he interviewed anywhere else, did he?
I don't think so. I might have seen one other team, but I don't remember who it was off the top of my head.
Do you like the hiring too? I think it's a good fit.
I don't know how I feel about it yet. I think it was the best available for that team. You know, they obviously need an offensive guy. Staley didn't work. So you need to bring in an offensive guy, and I think Jim Harbaugh is the best offensive guy on the table,
Hmm.
especially for that offense that they want to run. I mean, honestly, as a Spartans fan, I'm just happy he's gone from Michigan at this point. Um, he can get his cheating self out of the NCAA for all I care. Um, yeah, I think it's a good hire. I think it's interesting just seeing how stacked this coaching carousel is this year. Um,
It's unusually high. Yeah.
what these teams are gonna do with it, but uh, we'll jump on over to. I mean, probably the one that caused the second biggest headlines is the Patriots firing Bill Belichick and then hiring, or not hiring, but promoting Gerard Mayo from linebackers coach straight to head coach. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. The move, earlier in the year, they've been kind of talking about the Belichick thing on and off all year, and Belichick did what he did and just said, I don't know, I'm under contract and blah blah blah.
Right.
And his monotone voice, he's always entertaining. But anyway, the move, it sounds like they had that in the works for a while. Some reports I saw was worked into like his contract,
Yeah.
which was interesting because that got leaked like a week Belichick left, so it's kind of interesting. Um, a lot of people thought Vrabel might go there, but they chose to go with Mayo, and it sounds like they had that agreement in place a year ago. So it sounds like
Yeah.
Belichick really did know that he was leaving after this season, but didn't say anything about it.
Yeah. I mean, no one's surprised about that, right? Bill Belichick not telling the media something. What?
Yeah, he'd
Um,
never do that.
but I I don't know. He just left a bad taste in my mouth right away because he just instantly started talking about the whole race issue and hey, if I can get persecuted and make tens of millions of dollars, then sign me up. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean, I don't. No one knows anything about this guy, right? I mean, he was a pretty good linebacker, but I mean, their defense has been the only bright spot of their team. So
Right.
I you can make that argument for sure. But other than that, I mean, again, he was a linebackers coach. He wasn't even their defensive coordinator. So um, he could be amazing. He could be awful. We don't know. I have heard just from a couple news sources here and there that even the guys that played with him when he was still a player said that he was always going to be a coach. So um, he's got that going for him, and I think that guys like that typically have a decent record. Um, but yeah, I think it's a fine hire. Well, it's definitely wait and see as well, though.
Yeah, I know they need a quarterback for sure
Yeah.
because Zappy and what's his face aren't going to cut it.
Foles.
So
No, and I mean they have the
yeah,
third overall pick. It'll be interesting to
going to take
see.
somebody.
Um, I almost feel like they have the best luxury of just whichever guy the top two teams don't pick, whoever those two teams are, will just
Right.
fault of them, whether that's um, blanking on names, whether that's Drake May,
May,
Caleb Williams,
Caleb Williams, yeah.
or Michael Penix, or maybe they trade down Jeff Bonix. I don't know. Um, I do like Bonix a lot more than other people, though, despite his age, but it's another story for another time.
Right.
Next, we'll jump to the Tennessee Titans. Firing Mike Vrabel in the most shocking move, I think, of the entire offseason so far was them firing Mike Vrabel. Um,
Yeah, yeah, granted, obviously I root for the Jaguars, so I actually do respect him as a coach. I think he was one of the top coaches, honestly. I just felt like he was dealt a bad hand, bad roster. They had a lot of injuries. I think I don't think they should have got rid of him, but I'm okay
right.
with that he left. I feel like, are they better today with their hiring? I really don't think so. But
Right. And I mean,
obviously, there's a lot of moves to be made after this, too. So,
I've got some of his numbers right here. So he's in Tennessee for 6 years, 54-45 record, 4 winning seasons, 3 playoff appearances, 2-3 in postseason games, and he also went to the AFC Championship game.
won Coach of the Year 2 years ago, too.
Right. So like he was incredible for them. Um, they end up hiring Brian Callahan, who I had never heard of until today,
Right.
until they hired him, which maybe that makes me a casual, but he was the Cincinnati offensive coordinator,
So
which
he watched Joe Burrow be really good at football, basically.
right, right, but he was under Zach Taylor, and I know that the league kind of views Zach Taylor
Yeah.
as one of the offensive gurus. Um, it'll be interesting to see. I don't know how to feel about it because usually when you hire a guy like that, you're really counting on bringing in an influx of youth. And I know they have Will Levis, but are they going to stick with Will Levis? I don't know.
That's
They
hard to
don't
say.
have the draft capital invested in him that would make me confident in saying he will be their starter next year. Um, and that whole team is just getting old. It's getting very, very old. Um,
Hmm.
I do like their backup running back, Tajay Spears. I think he's going to be an incredible prospect in redraft and dynasty next year. Um, but yeah, I don't know how I feel with the hire. I think he could be good, but they definitely need some new receivers for sure. And then the best one for the team, I think, if we're going by team basis, I think this worked the best for the individual team. The Raiders hiring Antonio Pierce officially as their full-time head coach, no longer with the interim tag. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was a good move because obviously it hasn't worked for the last couple times they did big ticket
Right.
coaching moves. It hasn't worked, and then in fact they are still paying both of those coaches still.
Yeah.
So they kind of went. I think it was a good move for the locker room, and it was the cheap route right now because
Mhm.
they won't say that, but they're paying a lot of money to two coaches that aren't there right now.
Right.
So I think it was good. It sounded like players were going to revolt or demand trades if
Yeah.
he was not retained. Stars like Max Crosby said that, and they kind of use leverage. And really, they've been a mess, so they just kind of need to stabilize the boat for a little bit. They didn't really. I thought they'd go out big after the big ticket coaches, but obviously they felt like they had to keep their current team happy. So
Right. And that team's gonna be really interesting to watch next year, for sure. Especially depending on what
they
they
did
do in the
play.
draft.
They did play a lot better for him though. You could notice a
Yep.
big shift
Absolutely.
in all the games. Had that huge outburst against team was against the Chargers actually.
Yep.
Yeah, against the Chargers they had like what 50, 60 points. It was
Yeah.
ridiculous.
63, I think.
Yeah, yeah, crazy.
Yeah, they were incredible, and I think this is also kind of a flashback because they had the special teams guy Rick Bisaccia a couple years ago, right? Um,
Hmm.
and the team loved him to death, but they let him walk. Um, and I don't think that sat well with the locker room. And then now you're looking back on it, and I think he's with the Packers now, actually, right?
Yeah, he's their
Um,
special teams coach and assistant head coach.
yeah.
Thank you, Raiders.
So, yeah, I think that's great for them. You got to keep your stars happy when you got Devontae Adams and Max Crosby in your team.
Yeah.
So, moving now to some of the open positions, the Carolina Panthers Actually, you know what? Let's save that one for last because I think that one's actually the most
Yes.
interesting one. So we'll save that one for last.
Yeah.
So we'll jump to the Atlanta Falcons. Now, this is an open job officially, but I have
Mhm.
heard that, or sorry, not the Falcons, the Commanders is technically an open job, but I've heard that Ben Johnson is a done deal as
Yeah.
soon as the playoffs are over. So give me thoughts on that. Ben Johnson, the Commanders.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good move. Obviously, you look at what he's done with that roster. It's really impressive, and they continue to be impressive. He's done a really good job with the rookies, especially.
Yep.
I mean, you could argue if one of the best rookie classes, and that's probably a big reflection on him because um, head coach, he's more a defensive coach, obviously. So all the offensive success you can really give to him. So it's
Right.
impressive.
And my only, I wouldn't say fear, but my only skepticism just comes from the offense that he runs is very particular kind of offense, right? It's a very ground and pound. He likes using multiple running backs, and he loves using his tight ends as well. Um, so can he replicate what he did with David Montgomery, Jameer Gibbs, Sam Laporta this year, or if you go last year, uh, what was it? It was DeAndre Swift. Uh, Shoot, what's the guy? He's on the Saints now. What's his name?
The running back,
Yeah,
Jamal Williams.
Jamal Williams and T.J. Hawkinson. Can he do that with um, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson, and Logan Thomas?
It's just it.
I don't know, because you got to figure they're gonna draft a quarterback. Although you could absolutely get away with not drafting a quarterback though, right? Like Sam Howell has not been a world beater by any means, but he's been fine. And part of that's because they've been throwing the ball a million times. But um,
It could work for a while. You could still draft a guy or
right.
sign a veteran. There's a lot of veterans out there.
So I don't know. I'm very interested to see what happens. I would not be surprised if he comes out and we're like, oh my goodness, this guy is the next Sean McVay or something.
hmm
But I also wouldn't be surprised if he comes out and we're all like, oh, maybe he needs a few years to build up some personnel. Um,
Right.
but I also don't know if the new management is going to be willing to uh, have that patience. So that'll be a really interesting thing to watch. So
Right.
with that said, let's go to the Atlanta Falcons next.
Yes. And obviously they've been really heavily linked to Bill Belichick.
Yep.
Um, apparently one of the interviews was on like the Arthur Blank's yacht. So I would love to.
Interesting.
I would love to hear how that was. I just
Yeah.
picture Bill Belichick wearing a Hawaiian shirt, sitting on a yacht. But
Is that being drunk out
he's
of a
had two.
coconut?
Yeah, exactly. And he's had two interviews, so that strongly points.
Good
I mean,
sign.
there's been a few other coaches that had two. Jim Harbaugh had two there. There's a couple others that had interviews, but it would be interesting. It'd be shocking if it wasn't him, although it'd be interesting what he does there. There's not much to work with right there right now.
Right. And I mean, their team is much better than their record showed, right? I think they have an
Yeah,
insane
for
amount of
sure.
talent on offense, just not at the one position you really need talent, which is quarterback. Their defense was remarkable. It's just their defense isn't getting any younger though, right? So their defense is getting older, um, and you have to wonder if they've completely ruined Kyle Pitts or if an infusion of offensive genius can really change that around. Um,
Yeah, I don't know where to think on the Pitts thing because it's what he's 2 years completed now, and there's still at least 2 years.
is he 2 or 3?
Yeah, if it's three, then I don't think he can turn around. But hey, can't doubt Bill Belichick if he gets the job. So
Well, and I did hear
just
that
know.
Josh McDaniels is going to follow him if he gets that job,
Oh, okay, that makes
which would be
sense.
interesting.
I just know I'm not drafting him in fantasy ever
Right.
again.
Never again. Um, so yeah, I think the Falcons are going to be a really interesting spot with all that young talent they have on offense, especially. Um, just as long as they don't rehire Arthur Smith or something. Although I did hear Arthur Smith has some offensive coordinator looks as well from teams, which would be really interesting.
It is interesting. There's some funny names out there for coordinator positions.
Yeah. And then the second last position of open, the Seattle Seahawks and Pete Carroll getting fired this year.
Kind of surprising. That's not as surprising as Vrabel, but still surprising.
Yep.
Kind of thought he'd have that job until he didn't, but they did it gracefully. They kind of gave him the upper advisory role.
Yep.
They kind of really he just wasn't delivering at the end of the season, and I think that's just need a fresh voice. I mean, it's been quite a few years since the Super Bowl days. Yeah, 14 years. He also was in his 70s, so
yeah.
Just kind of going in a different direction. I know they interviewed Dan Quinn once
Yep.
or twice. I could see him going there. What other candidates have they interviewed? I mean, they're going to get a guy, get a big name.
I was just really interested that, because this is kind of what I was talking about last week. Why is it that more teams are not firing their head coach and then promoting their offensive coordinator? Right? Like, I genuinely don't understand this, because everybody knows that when you get a really, really good offensive play caller, he's going to be gone after 2-3 years maximum.
Right.
Because they're going to get a head coaching job, they're going to get paid way more, it's going to be way more worthwhile for them, and then you're going to lose them for nothing. I mean, it's
promoting within,
yeah, and whatever, but it's just really interesting. I really thought they were just going to promote Shane Waldron, their offensive coordinator. He's obviously with the Bears now, which I am so excited about. He and Clinton Kubiak were tied for number one on my dream list for that Bears OC position. And I'm just really interested to see where they go with this now, because if they go ahead and they hire somebody and the offense stinks, then they're going to be really kicking themselves for not just promoting Shane Waldron and giving him the reins, I think.
Right. I agree with you on that. Jaguar news, they hired Ryan Nielsen. He was on the Arthur Blank roster. He's the defensive coordinator. He has a good track record. I like that for Jags fans. Just thought I'd mention that quick.
Yep.
The Falcons initially blocked his request, when Atlanta changed course and let him interview. So it's always interesting when teams let coaches do lateral moves, especially nearby states. So it's kind of interesting. But he improved that Atlanta defense. I'm excited as a Jags fan. But
right.
While we're on D coordinators, by the way, your Vic Fangio, former Bear guy, he's been everywhere now.
Yep.
But the Dolphins let him. Looks like he's going to take the Philly defensive coordinator job, which means they're probably keeping Nick Sirianni, it sounds like.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that Nick Sirianni is staying, and the condition for him staying was that he had to fire both of his coordinators.
Both his coordinators, right.
Yeah, I really thought the Bears were going to bring him home. I really did. And for anybody that doesn't know, Vic Fangio is viewed as the father of the cover two. He's the guy that really revolutionized the Tampa 2 offense to stop guys like Mahomes with that 2017 Bears defense. And so that's why I actually think running backs are going to start to make a bit of a comeback, because everybody plays this cover 2 shell, and the only real way to beat that is to have a really good rushing attack as well, which is why you see Isaiah Pacheco getting so much run in this Chiefs offense. So I think we are actually going to see the value of the elite running backs increase more and more as we go on, until teams revert back. And it's just that my dog scratches himself and makes a lot of noise.
I'm in a hotel and you have a dog, so it's fair.
And anyways, moving on to the Carolina Panthers with their open position.
I don't think there's a line of coaches wanting that job right now.
Absolutely not.
They're in the same scenario. They're paying at least 2 coaches to not coach for them. It's interesting.
And a lot of money, too.
You almost should find like an Alabama assistant or something. Maybe Nick Saban, or I don't know. Get somebody that can with recently college quarterbacks. I don't know. Actually, Nick Saban wouldn't do that. Who am I kidding? He wouldn't do that.
I don't know anyone that would take this job. Like
You
this
don't have
has
a
to
first
be
round pick.
this has to be one of the least attractive openings we've seen in a long time. Right?
Trying to get Vrabel to interview.
I, see, and the problem is that it's been so long now. Like I thought their only hope was that they were gonna have to offer Jim Harbaugh an insane amount of money, and then hope that he
Yeah.
can turn Bryce Young around. I just
You want to hear? Here's who's been brought in to interview.
yeah, go for it.
Raheem Morris. He was a failed head coach with
Yep,
the Buccaneers, right?
yep.
Or the Cardinals. He was tied in with both teams either way. They also looked at Jairo Evero, offensive coordinator, and Buck's offensive coordinator. So there isn't a lot of people they've interviewed, but they're gonna if they want Vrabel, he's probably gonna choose like the Seahawks or another
Yeah,
job first, I would think.
yeah. I'm just trying to think of anybody that would be desperate enough to take this job. Because that's what it comes down to, right? Like you have to be desperate to take the job. I could see them taking a shot on like Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, he also interviewed for the Philly offensive coordinator
Um,
job.
he interviewed for Philly. I know he interviewed with Chicago as well. I'm so glad they didn't hire him.
Yeah,
Um,
he'd be interesting. I know he'll get another head coaching shot at some point, but I didn't think so soon anyway.
I just find it interesting that he wasn't even able to get an offensive coordinator position. I know that he probably wanted to go back to USC and all, but um, I don't know. I just don't love the idea of hiring a guy from a quarterback coach in college to an offensive coordinator position, or let alone a head coach position right away. Um, you got to show me that you can actually call the plays first. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I've heard, like I was talking to even my dad was saying that he's apparently some offensive guru. I haven't heard that before. I mean, I remember hearing that he was like buddies with Sean McVay, and that was like his big selling point initially. But
I just know he's rich and he likes to like flaunt it on like draft day. Remember that
yeah,
COVID year? He's like in this like elite mansion. Then that's all I really heard about him.
yeah. I mean, I think he had one top down defense in his was it 4 or 5 years as the head coach in Arizona. So
Hmm.
that's not a great sign when you're supposed to be some offensive guru and you have Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins on your team. So yeah, and then do you have any other coordinator notes for us?
Yeah, no, there's a few other. Kingsbury also interviewed for the Raiders offensive coordinator position. Looks like he's interviewed for the Eagles. Kubiak um, interviewed with the Saints. That's Gary Kubiak's son.
Yep.
Kind of interesting. Brian Greasy, former Bear,
Yep.
former a lot of teams. He's a good coach. Um, Pete Carroll, before the Chargers hired Jim Harbaugh, there was rumors he was going to try to throw his hat in the ring at the Chargers job. Obviously, that didn't happen,
Right.
which is interesting. Um, Player roster news of note is the Lions signed Zach Ertz
I
because they've
did see
had
that.
some injuries.
Yep.
That's kind of cool. It's interesting they didn't sign anywhere. Like he's been out of football for about 2 months, which
Yeah,
is interesting.
that's like the ultimate ring chasing that I've ever seen in my life. Like not signing with them for the playoffs, waiting until you know who the conference championship is going to be, and then signing is
And
crazy.
then choosing your team, so it's wild.
That's crazy. That ring needs an asterisk burnt into it. That's what that needs.
Yes, yes. That was one of the biggest things. Other news that leaked this week is we heard little snippets of it earlier, but the 49ers did try to sign Tom Brady when they knew that
Right.
Purdy had that injury. That's pretty interesting that it was you confirmed this week. Obviously, they made the right choice.
I mean, yeah, but
Um,
Purdy's lighting it up, man. Gotta love
yeah,
that
it's
kid.
pretty awesome. But it's just interesting that it was confirmed. It's like, oh, it is true. So those are the main news. Obviously, we have some great matchups coming up this weekend.
Absolutely.
It'll be fun. Those are the main ones. Of course, after we do this, there'll probably be like 3 coaching changes tomorrow morning. So if you're watching this later tomorrow or whenever this posts, so it's our bad.
My
Just want to
plan
keep the
is that
content going.
my plan is that I'm gonna have it posted by noon tomorrow. So that's my goal.
Yeah. By the way, we appreciate you guys listening to this. It's fun. We're just starting this up as a hobby, and if it takes off, cool. Eventually, we're gonna have some friends on here as occasional guests. So it'll be really cool. There's quite a few of them approach me that want to hop in occasionally. So, especially in the off season, that'll be
Right.
cool.
Absolutely. And so I just want to, again, for me, thank you guys so much for sticking with us and watching us as we're, like Sam said, we're just getting this off the ground and we are so excited. We're just two guys doing this for fun.
Absolutely.
And, trying to keep it light and upbeat and not drag all the politics and narratives into sports, that no one likes that, no one enjoys that. So,
No.
just please, if you enjoyed this, like the video, subscribe to the channel. You can see right down there, Unopinionated Sports on all platforms. Give us a follow. And yeah, thank you guys again so much, and we will catch you next week.
Yes, thanks, guys.